Newcastle 2, Tottenham Hotspur 1, and that is 6 wins in a row in all competitions for Newcastle United. They also got that very good 3-3 draw versus Liverpool, and Eddie Howe's just started putting his best players in their best position. They've got a bit of confidence, they've got a bit of momentum, and they are performing very well. And when they've got players like Lewis Hall, Livramento, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, Gordon, Isak, they've got a very good squad. And with one game a week, could they push and get top 4? Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about my thoughts on the game, and we're also going to touch upon Tottenham. Talk about Lucas Bergvall, excellent player today, because I'm going to be honest, Tottenham put in a much better performance versus Newcastle than Manchester United did. If I was a Tottenham fan, looking at the injuries, even like the fact that Dragusin had to come off, looking at how few players were available, and the fight that Tottenham showed in that second half, I wouldn't be too mad. I'd be frustrated because it's another loss for Tottenham. Things just aren't going for them. But when you look at the injury crisis Tottenham were in, they had a good first 15 minutes, then Newcastle controlled the first half. But they came out in the second half with this desire, this energy to really try and win the game. But, Newcastle defended well and just reduced them to crossing, which made it difficult for them. So I have to say, if I was a Tottenham fan, I'd be disappointed because it's another loss. But it wasn't like it was an embarrassing loss. I actually think that Newcastle struggled a little bit in that second half. I think, looking at the side, Archie Gray, another solid performance. I thought Reguilon did well when he came on. Pedro Porro put in some brilliant crosses. The only real threat from Spurs was Porro's crosses and Solanke's headers, because Newcastle defended excellently well. Botman not played in like 10 months. He did really well. You could see why Shah was missing in build-up, particularly to begin with. I think Newcastle struggled a bit in build-up. But Livramento, Lewis Hall, excellent pairing. What a partnership they've got there. The midfield looked a little bit leggy in the second half. In the first half, it was very good, but they looked a bit leggy in the second half, and maybe Willett could have come on sooner. Maybe that's something Eddie Howe could have done, because I felt that Tottenham grew in the second half, and Newcastle, they had so many games against difficult opposition, they just looked leggy. But the front three, as always for Newcastle, was excellent. And Tottenham-Newcastle is one of those games I always look forward to watching the most as a neutral, because Tottenham are one of the most attacking sides in the league. They always play attacking football. Newcastle got one of the most informed attacks in the league. There's going to be goals. It's going to be an exciting game, but they've also got so many young talents. Livramento, Lewis Hall, Bergvall, Gray, were all players that even as a Manchester United fan, I'm big fans of. I enjoy watching. I had a little bit of a tweet rant about how United fumbled Lucas Bergvall. We didn't. It was Brexit rules. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my general thoughts on the game. This is more second half. This is more first half. Talk about Newcastle, if I think they can get top 4. Livramento, Lewis Hall. I'm going to talk about them. Talk about Bergvall, Botman, Isak. So stay tuned for that. But we're going to start with my general thoughts on the game. And guys, if you do enjoy this video, please do go ahead and slap that like button. And of course, subscribe down below if you're new. ECILA Football does coverage of all the big 6 sides in the Premier League, but because I have my own channel for Man United, I replaced Man United with Newcastle United, because I said that they're the closest team to going into the big 6. Everyone said Villa, and I said no, Newcastle. I predicted Newcastle to finish 5th back in summer. I did. I said they have a good squad, even though they haven't had investment. I know that Newcastle have a good squad, and I've been saying that for a while. So let's go into it. Newcastle were the stronger team in the first half, bar the opening 10 minutes. And thank you very much, Solanke, for the FPL points. But yeah, I thought Tottenham started quite well. They got the goal. I think they needed the goal. But Tottenham are going to concede, and they're going to have those shaky moments with all those players out. And Newcastle capitalised on that. They won back the ball, Gordon goal. And Newcastle then in the second half took control, went 2-1 up. And then a little bit like the Man United game, they did take the foot off the gas in the second half. I think, they just looked a bit leggy, and Tottenham came out and put some real fight in. I thought in the second half, Tottenham were winning the duels more. They were winning the second balls better. They showed that intensity. They showed that fight. And Brandon Austin, by the way, he did very well, because where Tottenham have been weak at is corners. They're a bit like Man United, where, corners, they can't defend. But the way he was claiming it, that's Vicario's biggest weakness. That's probably the biggest thing I'm critical about Vicario about. I generally think, and maybe this is reactionary, but I'm surprised it was Forster that played over Brandon Austin. He's waited a while to play, and he looked very, very solid. I'd take him over Bayendier at United, I tell you that. He looked very solid. Bergvall was obviously Tottenham's best player today. I think Livramento will be my man of the match, though. I thought he was Newcastle's best player. But yeah, despite injuries, I thought Tottenham looked a lot better than Man United did against Newcastle. They showed more fight, they showed more intensity, and I thought the youngsters really stepped up. Bergvall and Archie Gray, very good players. Now, talking of youngsters, Livramento and Lewis Hall, what a fullback pairing. We're going to touch upon them lately. I thought Reguilon did very well when he came on, actually. And I thought Willock's substitution was needed. The leggy, the ball carrying. I probably would have put him in midfield and kept Isak up, because I thought the midfield looked exhausted. Even Lewis Miley, because he's quite good at retaining the ball and is actually quite physical for his age. I felt like Newcastle, I think my biggest criticism of Eddie Howe is I think he can be a bit stubborn to change things. Last year he barely played Lewis Hall. He kept persisting with Dan Burn at left back. Now, Dan Burn at centre back, solid player, but Dan Burn at left back, not the best. Now, I get that Lewis Hall's come on heaps and bounds defensively this season, and there was elements of him that was gettable last season, but I think that's the one criticism of Eddie Howe of he knows his best 11, that's his best 11, but make a few subs, make a few changes, rotate a bit more. I think that's probably my only. I think Willock would have come on early for me. I know that you guys have had the best midfield three in the league, arguably after Liverpool this season, with how good it's been if we were going off the last 6 or 7 games. But I would have probably thought, you know what, it looks a bit leggy, get maybe a Joelinton off and a Willock on, keep Isak up there, because I thought that Newcastle were going to need to make it 3-1, because I did really think Tottenham were going to score, but they didn't. Newcastle defended very well. And I just realised I'm talking really fast, but I've got so much to get through, so I do apologise. But yes, Livramento impressive, especially in the first half. He was a rock. Werner got the ball in a good area, and Werner just looked to run at Livramento like he thought he could beat him for pace. You can't beat Livramento for pace. He is quick. And I tell you what, Thomas Tuchel will be impressed. Look, Trent is England's best right back, no doubt about that. But Lewis Hall is England's best left back. He is. Luke Shaw is injured and probably never going to play again at this rate. It's so infuriating as a Man United fan. Chilwell isn't good. Lewis Hall was better. Newcastle fans can see it. I said Lewis Hall should have been taken to the Euros because he's one for the future. Like Adam Wharton was taken, like even Kwanzaa was picked for the squad. I said Lewis Hall should be taken because one, there's no left back and he's one for the future. I don't know why I wasn't taken to the Euros. I tweeted that back in May. But I'm a really good player, Lewis Hall. But Livramento was my standout player today. I'm probably going to give him man of the match. Murphy, good again. Murphy's been really good lately. I've always said I think Newcastle need a long-term replacement for Shah because he's ageing, and a right winger, even though Murphy's been great, because Murphy's good, but he's not quite Gordon or Isak level. But he's a very good player and he's doing very well lately. But, if you've got Murphy and Barnes as bench players and Willock as bench players, that's 3 very good players on the bench, which increases depth, which I think is what caused Newcastle problems last season when the Champions League with the injuries, the lack of depth. I think right centre-back, right wing is probably the 2 areas they need to address, but I thought Gordon looks very good. Gordon against Big Six sides, I almost put Gordon in on FPL because I said I swear this guy always gets a goal and assist whenever he plays a Big Six side. And I think Big Six sides, they give Newcastle a bit more space. I thought Gordon got in a few positions actually where maybe he could have got 2 on another day, maybe even 3 with the areas he got, and I thought he did well, was finding space, was a threat, the press, the energy, his ability to exploit space and run and run and run. Tottenham, with all the defenders missing, they struggled to play it from the back for a bit, and I think Gordon made it more difficult for them. I also want to say Botman did very, very well considering how long he's been out. Shaky start, but I think he did very well to begin with. And it's not like a shaky start from Botman. I thought the first 10 minutes, just Newcastle needed to warm up, I think. Solanke and Porro combination looked threatening for Tottenham, but they were really only reduced to creating chances from out wide, which came from Porro's fantastic crossing and Solanke headers, because I felt that Newcastle defended well, and they defended very well in the air and defended the box very well. I actually think Livramento did quite well in the air as well. But as I said, I think Howe could have made subs earlier. I think the Newcastle midfield looked leggy and exhausted, but I thought Newcastle defended well. They reduced Tottenham to just crosses, and I thought Spurs looked a bit shaky in build-up, and Newcastle pressed well. Murphy, another good performance from him, providing a threat. Isak got the goal today. Don't know if that was a bit of luck, how it fell to him, but he's a natural. He's in the right. If you're a striker that's in the right position at the right time, you can score tapping goals and you can score worldies like the one versus Liverpool that was hit at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you can then link up play and you can dribble with the ball and you can pass the ball. That's like Alexander Isak. That's like Thierry Henry. He's a different level of striker, and another goal for him. And I think if we go to his record here, 7 consecutive Premier League matches. Is he going to try and reach that Vardy record? Who knows? But let's continue on. Shah missed at times in build-up. Shah, and I said this now, I said last season, this is what I said last summer. Someone asked me what's the most underrated centre-back partnership in the Premier League? And when they said partnership, they should just name 2 centre-backs. And I said Anderson, who was at Crystal Palace, and Shah of Newcastle. I said they are the 2 most underrated centre-backs in the Premier League. And I will stick by that. Shah, last year when I made an underrated 11, and Mbeumo was in there, Shah was in there, Cunha was in there. Do you know what I mean? Look at them all now. Honestly, I didn't play today, it was missed, but he's one of the most, I will stick by this, one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. Maybe because he doesn't look all fancy. I said Mbeumo, I said Cunha, I said Shah, I said underrated players. And I felt that, his ability on the ball to break lines, I think would have helped Newcastle elements and build up. And I think when they can get Shah and Botman back together, Newcastle will look a lot better. I also said this after going 1-0 down. I think Newcastle responded well. They got better at playing out from the back. They moved the ball quicker. They started creating chances. There was a bit of diamond formations. The number 6 plays as an advanced 8 at times, creates overloads. And when Tottenham have space to get at them, it was causing problems. And I thought that, the low cut crosses from Newcastle were threatening. It was causing Tottenham problems. And they exploited in that first half a little bit of a shaky Tottenham defence. They were very good in possession, but out of possession, they were pressing Spurs. They were forcing Tottenham into mistakes, which obviously resulted in the Gordon goal and a few chances. But they were really pressing Tottenham, forcing them to mistakes. And I think Lucas Bergvall was the one Tottenham midfielder that really shone, and the one player that really shone in that first half for Tottenham, because he could get the ball with his back to goal and turn out the press and receive the ball in tight angles. But Newcastle were pressing Tottenham very well and forcing them into mistakes. So the question is, can Newcastle get top 4? Now, I predicted Newcastle, I believe, at the beginning of the season to finish 5th. But with Manchester City's drop-off, I think Newcastle could well and truly finish in the top 4. They look better than Manchester City right now. They really do. And they've got Isak, they've got Hall, they've got Livramento, Gordon, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes. All the top teams would want to get their hands on those players. Shaw and Botman, when fit, works well. Murphy steps up. Barnes and Willock are very good players to have coming off the bench. And they've got 6 wins in a row in all competitions. I think it massively depends on injuries. I do think had they been able to keep Minter and Anderson, I think easily top 4, because Anderson's been unbelievable for Forest this season. Minter's a strong player as well. I think they're very unlucky because they could have some team with Minter and Anderson, and then they just bring in a top long-term centre-back because Botman keeps getting injured and Shaw's ageing. They have a very good side. I think Newcastle could get top 4. I think 5th could get them in the Champions League if the English clubs perform well in Europe. I think Newcastle will very comfortably get back in the Europa League. Potentially, they could get back in the Champions League, which would then give them the funds to actually invest. Because I think Newcastle's recruitment has been very good. Isak, Hall, Livramento, Gordon, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, all a very good recruitment. As a Man United fan, I'm jealous because the one guy I actually wanted to help with recruitment, Dan Ashworth, they've already sacked because the people at Man United have no patience, whereas Dan Ashworth has a bit more of a patient approach, and they've got rid of him already, which is ridiculously stupid from Ineos. But the work that Newcastle done in recruitment, very good squad, very good side. But what impressed me today was the fullbacks, the partnership, unbelievable in terms of talent, future. Livramento has been very unlucky with injuries, but today, look, it's Werner. Werner isn't the best player in the world, but Werner had space. Werner had areas to run into. Werner had opportunities to be a threat. And I thought that Livramento defended very well, pushed Werner out of the game and just couldn't give Werner the opportunity to get that crossing on, get that shot out. He was very good at defending the wide channels. Physically, very good, winning the headers, the duels, off the ground, the work, did very well. He's an engine. He's hardworking. He has that desire. And he's also technically sound. And, Timo did not have a sniff. Timo Werner did not have a sniff. Lewis Saul has probably been the best left-back in the league this season. Robinson and Kirk have impressed me, but I think in terms of his technical ability, I think Lewis Hall has been the best. He kept Johnson very, very quiet. Defensively, he's solid. He's really come on leaps and bounds defensively this season, but he can overlap, he can invert, he can help in progression. Very good. I mean, technically, IQ-wise, one of the best. Surely Tuchel. Surely there's a no-brainer that Tuchel's going to pick him. But we're going to talk about the Spurs players that stood out for me before we talk about Botman and Isak. I want to give Bergvall a shout-out, who was probably unlucky to be subbed off, but I know Tottenham have a game against Liverpool in a couple of days. They've got a lot of games coming thick and fast and big injuries, and maybe Bergvall's going to start in that. I know Bergvall's come up with cramp a few times after he's played more than 60 minutes. But I actually think, considering Newcastle arguably have one of the most physical midfields in Europe and one of the best midfields in Europe at the moment, I think physically they're top 3 and, they have one of the best midfields in Europe as well. I thought Bergvall did exceptionally well because he was pressed, he was pushed, and I thought he turned out from the press really well. The runs he made as well, carrying the ball, his desire to get forward, physically getting up the pitch, getting forward, which resulted in the first goal through Solanke, was really good. But he does these subtle passes out wide as well, playing it out wide. He also can disguise the ball quite well when he passes. And when you look at the profile of Bergvall, physically and technically, he's got what you want to be a top player. It's now just more about his development and stuff. Sometimes he needs to choose when it's better to pass and when it's better to carry, and that's decision making. But he's raw. He's 18 years of age. For 18 years of age, he's a very good player. And I think technically and physically, he is the profile midfielder that you want. Will he develop into a top player? He needs time. And when you look at Ange, with all the injuries he's got and how young the squad is, I think that if Tottenham get recruitment right and they have luck with injuries and the young players develop into the potentials they have, more Gray, Bergvall, I think that Ange should get time. And I get why people are giving Ange stick. The results aren't good. But there's not a manager out there that I think would come to Tottenham and get them playing unbelievable football. They've recruited for Ange. It's a young squad with lots of injuries. But imagine this time next season, these young players are going to get even better. Tottenham don't have the injury crisis they have. They get a few more signings in. Generally, I think there's a bit of an overreaction around, Ange and Tottenham. Now, Bergvall's obviously raw, but it's the intent, it's the intensity show. But I also thought ground coverage, off the ball work was good, and I think he could be a top player. I think if I'm Tottenham, I'd be very excited about him. I want to give Botman a shout out because he's obviously been out for a while. Before he did a very good job, box defending very good, tackles, draws one. Tottenham didn't have many clear cut chances. They had a lot of the ball in the second half, but if we go back here to XG, only 0.81. Because Newcastle defended incredibly well. And then Isak is just not normal. He is an absolute goal machine, isn't he? But I don't want this video to be longer than 15 minutes, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But I might do a Premier League roundup talking about this again later on this week. So thank you everyone for watching. See you next time. Bye.